In the 3rd year of my marriage to Ryan, his young secretary sent me a photo. Not just any photo, but a glossy, perfectly lit shot of her curled against him in bed, her smirk frozen in pixels, her bare shoulder peeking from under the sheets. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, my expression didn't even flicker. Instead, I calmly forwarded the image to my lawyer. 2 days later, he slid a neat stack of documents across his polished desk. The divorce agreement was thicker than I expected. But I didn't hesitate. I signed with a steady hand, my pen gliding over the paper as though it had been waiting years for this moment. I dialed Ryan's number immediately after, but the voice that answered wasn't his. It was sweet, high-pitched and deliberately coquettish. "Mr. Miller is currently unavailable. Would you like to leave a message?" Click. I hung up without a word. Instead, I slipped the freshly signed divorce papers and the lawsuit into an envelope, and had them sent directly to his office. When the same secretary texted me a smug little, "Hope you're doing well," with a winking emoji, I exhaled, not in pain, but in relief. It was over. Congratulations, Ryan. You're walking away with nothing. Our marriage had been more than a merging of 2 wealthy families. Both of us came from money. Yes. But our union wasn't some calculated, arranged deal inked by our parents. We were supposed to be the perfect love story. Childhood sweethearts who grew up side by side, school uniforms to wedding attire. Best friends, partners, a match everyone envied. Our families had been intertwined for generations. Our mothers were as close as sisters, and I had heard more than once how they'd joked about pairing us off even before I was born. Ryan's name and mine both carried meanings of promise, as if fate itself had scripted us into each other's lives. From the time we could walk, Ryan was there. 2 months older, endlessly protective, insisting on being the big brother. I remember our first day of kindergarten. My tiny hand clutched his so tightly that our knuckles turned white. The classroom was strange and loud, and I burst into tears before the teacher could even ask my name. Ryan didn't let go. He patted my head, offered me his candy, and even hummed a lullaby under his breath. In elementary school, when I failed a test and locked myself in my room, he was at my door within minutes. Armed with my favorite sweets and that calm, steady voice that always made the world feel a little less sharp. And in middle school, that day is etched into my memory forever. The day my period came for the first time, staining my skirt, freezing me in my seat. Ryan's reaction was instant. He bolted to the store and returned not only with pads, but also with hand warmers and a steaming cup of brown sugar water. His ears were crimson, his voice awkward, but his eyes steady. He shoved the items into my hands, muttered something about the clerk's advice, then insisted on carrying me home when I admitted to cramps. The sun was warm that day. I still remember the feel of it on my face, the sound of his breathing as I rested on his back, and how my whispered, "Thank you," made him walk faster, as if embarrassed. I stopped calling him Big Brother that year. Not because I saw him differently, but because I already did. I just didn't want to admit it yet. That innocent affection bloomed through high school. At 18, during my birthday party, Ryan stood before me in a perfectly pressed shirt, the brooch I'd given him gleaming at his chest. With a bouquet of roses in his hands and a tremor in his voice, he asked, "Nora, I like you. Will you be my girlfriend?" And I, foolishly certain that love like ours was unbreakable, nodded. Tears welled in my eyes and I threw myself into his arms, surrounded by classmates. Cheers and blessings. We shared hugs and kisses. At that point my feelings for Ryan reached their peak. Later, he explained that while we had always liked each other, dating was not the same as being childhood sweethearts. A relationship needs to feel unique. It required a sense of ceremony. He suggested that confessions begin with a bouquet. This is why he chose my birthday. This special day, when we officially confessed and transformed from childhood friends to boyfriend and girlfriend, was a turning point. The senior year of high school was difficult and exhausting, but with Ryan by my side, all I felt was sweetness. We worked hard together by drilling through practice questions and taking exams. Our scores gradually improved. We eventually got into the same university. Honestly, both of our families expected us to major in finance so we could eventually take over the family businesses, but I preferred maths. After some family discussion, I enrolled in the mathematics department. Ryan, who was studying finance at the time, told me, "Nora, that you should do what you love. I will work hard to become strong enough to protect you from everything." I believed him. My parents, who had watched him grow up since he was a child, also trusted him completely. They had already decided that once they were gone, their son-in-law would take over the family business and continue to protect their daughter. Knock, knock, knock. A soft knock came at the door. It was Annie, our long-time housekeeper. Miss, everything is packed. Mr. Lee is waiting downstairs. Okay, let us go. Both Annie and Mr. Lee had known me since I was a child. Ryan and I got married, and they moved with me into our new home and helped take care of everything. A year ago, I asked Annie to begin packing up my belongings in this house gradually. She had no idea why I wanted to do that, but she treated me like her own daughter and mindlessly obeyed my instructions. She packed everything that belonged to me, not allowing anyone else to touch anything. By today, she hadn't told Ryan anything about it. There was nothing left of mine in this house except a few wardrobes full of clothes that Ryan had purchased for me. I didn't want to take one piece. Perhaps that is why he never noticed how all of my belongings had gradually disappeared over the last year. After we officially got together, our parents purchased a villa in the middle of both of our companies to serve as our wedding home. I've been living here for 3 years now. Ryan and I chose everything in this house together, but I don't remember how I felt at the time. Without hesitation, I went outside. Mr. Lee had already loaded my suitcases into the trunk. Several other cars were parked behind him. That was the cleaning crew I had hired. They would enter the villa after I left and clear out everything that remained. They were professional. Within a day, they would erase all traces of my existence here. By tomorrow, the real estate agency will have listed this villa for a reduced price. The buyer had already been found. Once the cleaning was completed, they'd be able to move in with their luggage from the road. My telephone rang. It was Ryan. Nora, did you call me? I didn't respond. Sorry, I was busy and didn't notice. Don't get mad, honey. I will not do it again. His voice remained as clear and affectionate as ever. When he spoke to me, it was always sticky, sweet. After all, we'd only been married 3 years. He was only 25, young, capable, and wealthy. He was precisely the type of golden bachelor that wealthy families desired, but unfortunately for them, he was not. A childhood sweetheart from a similarly powerful family had gotten to him first, and he was, of course, the dominant CEO. All the young women adored Nora. Why haven't you said anything? Have you seen the text I sent you? I responded with a question instead. Ryan's voice became confused, indicating that he had rechecked his phone. Huh, I do not see any text. What have you sent me? So it was deleted. Just as I suspected, his secretary had deleted it. I gave a small laugh and changed the topic. When are you coming back? Ryan had taken a business trip to a nearby city for a large project. He had planned to stay for a week, but he was already 2 days late. There has been an issue with the project. He said it would take 2 more days. Ryan spoke in a pitiful tone, hoping to sound endearing. I miss you so much, Nora. I wish I could come home and hold you right now. I did not comfort him as I usually did. Instead, I smiled faintly and said, Nora, there's a surprise waiting for you when you get home. You're the best. He said, playing along as usual. After a few more meaningless words, I hung up. While I was on the phone with Ryan, his secretary forwarded me several additional photos. Ryan was leaning against the headboard, talking on the phone while wearing a loosely draped bathrobe. His expression was gentle and affectionate, and he whispered sweet words as if he were truly in love. Another photo depicted 2 plane tickets to a luxury resort destination. It is evident from all of this, Ryan was not working on any project. He was hooking up with his secretary, and they were planning a romantic getaway. I did not respond to the secretary. She had outlived her usefulness for me. The message I sent earlier was deliberate. I knew she'd delete it. She would always take the opportunity to erase things after provoking me. Even the phone call I made to Ryan displayed her number, not mine. She probably thought she finally had a chance to replace me. By deleting the messages, Ryan would be unaware that I had already signed the divorce papers and filed the lawsuit. Once the court ruling was issued, our marriage would be declared null and void. When the time came, the secretary could play dumb and swoop in, as if she had nothing to do with it. But she didn't realize she wasn't the first to challenge me. I can't remember who sent me the first message. Perhaps it was a classmate from Ryan's department in our 2nd year of marriage. It may be a new intern for his company. There were too many young girls back then. Ryan was flirting. Nothing had happened yet. This secretary had the most success of them all. After flirting with Ryan for over 6 months, he finally got his way and made it into Ryan's bed. I looked through all of the flashy social media posts. He intended for me to see expensive gifts and extravagant outings, and I couldn't help but laugh. Did he not realize I could sue to reclaim all of those things? Of course. I had already asked my lawyer to prepare the paperwork. Every penny Ryan spent on those women, from the first to the secretary, I would take back. They were the ones who handed me the evidence so eagerly. I didn't understand why they were so brazen. Why did they think provoking me would make me angry, collapse, scream, and fight? I wasn't gonna give them that satisfaction. I'd gather evidence and ensure that every girl who knowingly became involved with a married man faces the consequences of her actions. Of course, the man who couldn't stop himself was the most repulsive of all. Those girls were after his money in the hopes of climbing the social ladder, but they made the wrong decision, and Ryan couldn't be loyal and betray our marriage. That is unforgivable. My parents were already waiting at home. When my mother noticed several suitcases in the car, she was visibly shocked. Nora, what is going on? Why have you brought so much luggage? Mom, I divorced Ryan. My parents froze, believing I was joking. Nora, are you sick or what? My mother asked. Why would you want to divorce little Ryan? She reached out to touch my forehead, worried, and asked me to come inside and talk. I took my mother's hand and walked into the living room. My father motioned for the others in the house to leave Nora. What happened? He inquired with concern. He understood that, while I had always been spoiled, I was never impulsive. I put the printed documents on the table in front of them. They looked through. The papers were puzzled at first, but their expressions darkened. The more they read, when they came to the most recent photos, my father slammed the documents down in rage. He cheated on you. Unbelievable. I'm going to have his family give us a proper explanation. My mother was equally shocked. She clutched my hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. Nora, I didn't realize you were going through this. She spoke, her voice trembling. If I had known Ryan would turn out like this, I would never have allowed you two to be together. Ryan was the boy. They had witnessed their children grow into adults. They believed they knew him best. Who would have predicted that the person who once adored their daughter would transform into someone who could not remain faithful after only a few years of marriage? The filth he had been hiding had now been exposed in front of their daughter's eyes. Why haven't you told me sooner? My mother asked softly. It must have been tough to go through all of this alone. My mother said, heartbroken. My father stood up. His eyes were bloodshot from anger. Right now, I'm calling that bastard, as well as Mr. Miller. I want to know how they raised their son. Dad, don't call yet. I replied calmly. My mother believed I was still emotionally attached to Ryan, and she grew upset. Sweetheart, how can you keep protecting him after everything he's done to you? Ryan is currently in bed with his secretary. He isn't picking up. Mr. Miller, I added, remained composed. We will tell him later. It was as if I wasn't mentioning my cheating husband. Nora, are you out of your mind with anger? My mother inquired, panicked. I'm fine, mother. I reassured her. I want to wait until Ryan returns before informing the Millers that I have other matters to attend to in the coming days. Please trust me. I will not let myself be taken advantage of. After a lengthy discussion, my parents finally reached an agreement. Meanwhile, Ryan had just arrived with his secretary when he began receiving frantic phone calls from his former flings. Ryan's face darkened as one of them cried to him on the phone for quite some time before hanging up. That's when he realized something wasn't right. Nora hadn't called him once during his entire trip. No surprise. No wonder she sounded cold the last time they spoke. She must have learnt about the gifts he gave to the other girls. Nora had been spoiled by both families her entire life. She had never faced such humiliation. She adored him so much. She must be furious right now. Ryan clenched his fists with frustration. These women had accepted numerous gifts from him. They couldn't even keep quiet, and now they had the nerve to ask for his assistance. Ridiculous. He quickly attempted to call Nora, but the call did not go through. His secretary noticed his foul mood and tried to warm up to him. Mr. Miller, what is wrong? I told you when we got back, we'd be done. Please pay attention to how you speak to me. Ryan snapped coldly. The secretary lowered her head inside. Embarrassment was painful, but Ryan had no time for her drama. He got into the car and immediately told the driver to take him home, ignoring the secretary, who ran after it in vain. When he arrived at the villa, the driver spoke awkwardly. Sir, the gate will not open. I'm not sure what's happening. It usually opens automatically. She's just throwing a fit, Ryan said with a faint smile. Not a big deal. I will go out and handle it. He assumed Nora was pulling one of her old stunts, locking him out to make a point. It made him smile even bigger. That little girl of his still had that fairy spirit. He got out of the car and used the fingerprint scanner. Access was denied. He entered the code manually. Still denied. Ryan, exasperated, called out to the house. Okay, Nora, I am back. Allow me to explain first. All right. He soon heard footsteps from inside the villa, just like when they were children. Nora could never be mad at him for long, no matter how angry she became. When he sweet-talked her, she'd always run to open the door, but Ryan's smile froze when he saw who opened it. Who the hell was this guy? Why was a stranger standing at the door of his house? Was he a newly hired housekeeper? The man wore loungewear and leaned halfway out the door, asking, "Can I help you?" "Who are you?" Ryan demanded that his voice be cold. The man frowned, puzzled. "Why are you messing with my gate, yelling at my door, and now asking who I am?" Ryan sneered. "This is my house. Where is Nora? Did she ask you to participate in this little act of hers? Let me in. I don't want to talk to you." The man laughed in disbelief and pointed to the main gate. The man pointed to the villa behind him. "I'm not sure who you are or what you're talking about. But you're looking for the previous owners of this place." "I'm not sure where they moved, but I bought this house 3 days ago. Everything was completed legally and properly." "No, that is impossible." Ryan spoke, his voice becoming tense. "This is Nora's and my marital home. There is no way it was sold to you." The property management team had arrived by then, drawn by the commotion. They recognized Ryan and attempted to explain the situation politely. The man was the new legal owner of the villa, but Ryan refused to accept it. Finally, out of courtesy, the man opened the door and let Ryan come inside to see for himself. Once inside, Ryan stood frozen, with nothing belonging to him or Nora. The rooms were empty, the curtains, carpets, and everything they had picked up together were gone. The man sneered as he looked at Ryan's dazed expression. "I told you this house had been sold to me. What didn't Nora tell you? She was done with you. Perhaps she even sold your wedding home. You seem to have truly broken her heart." Ryan stumbled out of the villa, totally disoriented. "I had just finished a phone call with my lawyer when he came looking for me." The housekeeper had informed my mother that Ryan was at the door, enraged. She was prepared to throw him out herself. "Let him in. I told Mum not to get upset just yet." When Ryan entered, he attempted to greet my mother, but she completely ignored him. He gave an awkward smile and crouched down in front of me, his voice soft and affectionate. "I apologize for being late. I did not mean to make you sad, Nora." I kept my head down and said nothing. He proceeded. "Nora, there is nothing between me and those women. The gifts were part of a company project rewards. My assistant distributed them, and she accidentally used my account. I didn't tell you because I was concerned you would misunderstand." Ryan had rehearsed his excuse. After all, he thought I was just a spoilt rich girl who had no idea how businesses worked, and he knew how much I adored him. He had known me for more than 20 years. He was confident that if he apologized quickly enough, I would forgive him. That had always worked, but this time I looked up into his eyes and asked quietly, "Is the scenery in Cloud City beautiful?" His expression changed instantly. You knew he was whispering. "You're still wearing your secretary's perfume." Ryan rushed to explain what I had said. "That's simply something I brushed against by accident. Please, Nora, do not misunderstand. You have no idea how many times I have tried to call you. I sent you so many messages but you never replied." I let the tears fall. They ran down my face as I looked at him. Slow, silent, and sorrowful. I had practiced that look in the mirror several times, perfecting the angle that made me appear fragile and heartbroken. "Nora doesn't cry." Ryan went into a panic. "I can explain everything." I swear he reached out to wipe my tears, but I moved away from him without saying anything. I picked up my phone and opened the folder containing every message sent by his many so-called close female friends, one by one. I showed him all of the screenshots and photos. When he saw the first message, his face paled. His complexion had turned deathly white by the time I scrolled to the ones from his secretary. From the day their flirting began half a year ago to the inappropriate photos just days before. Each image and text made his previous explanations sound emptier, pathetic and fake. "Nora," Ryan's hands trembled as he reached for me again, but I backed away. "It's all made up," he stammered desperately. "They are all lying." I swore. I remained silent. Tears are still falling. Then I quietly said, "Let us get a divorce." "No," Ryan blurted out. "I will not divorce you. I will never divorce you." He dropped to his knees and swore frantically. "Nora, I was drunk that night. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I never intended to hurt you. Please do not leave me." He was still lying, trying to twist the truth, but I was satisfied because this was the same pathetic struggle. That's exactly what I wanted. That way, I'd have more time to handle the financial aspects of things. "Nora, do not divorce me. I am begging you," Ryan pleaded. "I swear I won't make you cry again." He kept talking, attempting to persuade me for a long time before I finally gave a faint, broken response. "Just go. I don't want to see you right now. Allow me to calm down." Ryan didn't want to leave, but my mother contacted the staff to have him removed. The moment he vanished, I wiped away my tears and prepared for the meeting with my lawyer. In comparison, my mother watched me talk and laugh with the attorney. She assumed I was emotionally unstable as a result of my heartbreak, but she had no idea I had been planning for this exact moment for 3 years. The harvest had finally arrived. Why couldn't I be happy? When did I stop loving Ryan? I couldn't even recall. It could be one of those bright, breezy afternoons after we began college. We rarely saw one another. Our majors were in different departments, and we were so preoccupied with our studies that we barely had time to meet at first. We continued to see each other in the evenings, but it gradually became limited to weekends. We spoke on the phone every day, and our years of love did not appear to change with distance. Every time we met, we felt as close as if nothing had changed. Then one day, I noticed someone confessing to Ryan on the campus confession wall, but I believed him and even teased him about it. Ryan was attractive. I grew up in a wealthy family. Of course, people would prefer him. I felt secure enough not to be jealous, but I noticed that during our few moments together, he kept bringing up another girl's name. It made me uncomfortable, but I didn't think much of it until one day, when I saw a video posted on the confession wall by someone who had accidentally recorded them on camera. The title read, "The couple I've been shipping is real and so sweet. I am living for this." I clicked on it, curious. In the video, a handsome man and a lovely girl sat close together. As they spoke, their heads tilted towards each other, and they smiled. I couldn't hear what the girl said, but Ryan smiled and gently patted her head. Their eyes were filled with warmth, and the sunlight bathed them in a soft glow, creating the atmosphere of a romantic scene straight out of a movie. It was beautiful. If that boy hadn't been my boyfriend, Ryan, I might have thought it was cute too. My hands trembled with rage. As I scrolled down to the comments, I discovered that the girl in the video was the same one who had confessed to him earlier. Ryan once told me he didn't know her, but commenters mentioned her name, which was the same name he'd been using so frequently lately. So the signs had always been there. I stumbled out of bed and rushed to the door, determined to confront him in person. But as I yanked the door open, I ran into my flatmate, who had just returned. She saw how frantic I was and asked Nora, "Where are you going?" "I am going to find Ryan," I snapped. "Go back." My flatmate was fully aware of my relationship with Ryan. She paused for a second before gently grabbing my arm. "Nora, would you like to see how you look right now?" My mind was a total mess. Anger and heartbreak overshadowed all logic. I shook my head and attempted to push past her, but she dragged me back into the room and in front of the full-length mirror. I looked up to see a woman I didn't recognize. Her face was twisted in anger. Her hair was a tangled mess. Her cheeks were soaked with tears, one pajama button was undone, and she wasn't even wearing shoes. Who was this? I stared blankly at the reflection. The woman in the mirror stared back, just as confused and disoriented, but no less wrecked. How could this be me? I'd never looked so broken. "Calm down," my roommate said, gently sitting me down and handing me a glass of water. It was apparent she had seen the same video that night. She listened as I cried and cursed for hours. In the end, she looked at me with soft eyes and said, "Nora, you're Nora Foster. You're supposed to be confident, radiant, and full of life. You're not meant to look like this." Her family was impoverished. Paying for college had always been a struggle. She worked part-time constantly to earn tuition. Later, I asked my family to step in and cover all her school expenses. I even helped her get a tutoring job at a friend's house last year when her family experienced a setback. It was I who arranged the hospital and treatment for her mom, and she fully recovered. She was grateful and often said I was her little ray of sunshine. Now, hearing her repeat it, I instinctively turned to look at the mirror. The reflection still looked like a ghost hair, messy face, pale and puffy from crying. But my roommate's words had struck a chord. I was Nora Foster. I was the heir to a wealthy family. I wasn't someone who existed to orbit around Ryan Miller. I decided to confront him that weekend. After all, we'd grown up together, childhood sweethearts, for so many years. I truly loved him and had pictured a life with him. But if he had fallen for someone else, then, as angry as I was, I believed we should part on civil terms. What I never expected was for Ryan to show up that weekend as if nothing had happened. He brought my favorite cake, smiled like always, and treated me with the same tender affection as before. I couldn't understand what he was trying to do, so I asked him directly. "Ryan," I said, "are you cheating on me?" He denied it. Immediately, I showed him the video I had saved after watching it. He sighed, not angry, not guilty, just gently indulgent of Nora. "That's just the camera angle. We were in a group talking about a project. Look, there are other people in the frame too. Are you jealous, sweetheart?" Then he reached out and touched my head. "My precious Nora is getting jealous. I'll be more careful. From now on, I won't give anyone the chance to start rumors." He was as gentle as ever. His gaze was full of affection. His ponytail was warm as it rested on my head, but I felt like I'd been thrown into an icy pit 20 years ago. I'd known Ryan for 20 years, and it was only now that I realized in his heart, I was nothing but a fool. The closeness, the intimate body language. In that video, he thought it meant nothing, and his explanation was full of holes thrown together without care. If I had asked one or two more questions, he would have slipped. When I didn't say anything, he gently took my hand, gave it a little shake, and coaxed. "Come on, Nora. We're going to get married someday. You have to have more faith in me." Yes, married. I was supposed to marry Ryan, so that meant he could flirt with others in the meantime. And when he was done playing, I'd still be waiting at home like a loyal little wife. In that moment, the man I had loved for so many years suddenly felt rotten to the core. Still, I didn't sentence him for this one thing. I started paying closer attention, and then I found several girls who were involved with Ryan. There was no physical cheating. Not that I could prove, but the way they talked, the way they acted, there was no mistaking it. The intimate gestures, the flirty tones. It was apparent, and they all made it clear that this was just the kind of man Ryan was. I had been blind. It had taken me 20 years to see him for who he was. The more I thought about everything we'd shared over the years, the more disgusted I felt from that day on. I secretly enrolled in finance courses. I pushed myself until I was mentally exhausted. Every day, I needed to know whether Ryan was with me, because he truly loved me, or because he wanted something else. I was carrying the legacy of generations of wealth. I couldn't let it all fall apart in my hands. Thankfully, I had my roommate. When she found out my plan, she immediately changed her major to finance. After graduation, I placed her inside the Miller Group. After all, it was too easy for the future Mrs. Miller to get a classmate, a job in the family business. I even specifically asked Ryan to take special care of her, so she moved through the company under his name. No one suspected a thing. No one doubted the love-struck, foolish girl they thought I was. All these years, everyone only saw how deeply I loved Ryan. Whenever gossip reached my ears, I always chose to believe in him. I never once confronted him. Ryan even asked me why. I didn't seem to care about anything. He wanted me to stay home and be his quiet, devoted wife. Everyone said I was the epitome of a rich Hess in love, graduating from a top university to rush into marriage and become a full-time housewife. I had a massive family business behind me. But they said I didn't care about any of it. All the business projects had been handed over to Ryan to manage. Everyone said that eventually Ryan would inherit both the Miller Group and Foster Corp. Once that happened, the two families would officially merge. Rumors like that had been circulating among high society ever since our wedding. It was something everyone tacitly acknowledged that the Miller Group would eventually absorb the Foster Corporation. That's why all those savvy CEOs scrambled to collaborate with Ryan. Trying to get ahead of the curve, hoping that when the Millers took over Foster, they'd get a piece of the pie too. They weren't wrong about one thing. The two companies were about to merge. But not in the way they had envisioned, because it wasn't the Miller Group taking over Foster. It was Foster Corp, my Foster Corp, taking over the Miller Group. After my lawyers finish reviewing the evidence and documents, Ryan's entire net worth, including his shares in the Miller Group, will be transferred to my name. Every time one of Ryan's women tried to provoke me during our marriage, I'd quietly take a Miller project and hint that Foster was interested in partnering. A man who just got caught cheating is always the most guilty, the most eager to please. That's how I diverted. Nearly all of the Miller Group's most profitable projects were fostered by Ryan, who never once questioned them. He approved those transfers quite happily, probably afraid I might grow suspicious. After all, our families were close. Wasn't it all staying in the family? Anyway, I played my part for 5 years. Long enough for everyone around me to believe I loved Ryan deeply. So much so that when our families planned the wedding, no one mentioned a prenuptial agreement. That was how strongly they believed in my love for Ryan. He unquestioningly trusted me before the wedding, and as a show of sincerity, he signed a prenuptial agreement in front of both families. It stated that if we divorced for any reason, he would leave with nothing worse for himself. He even included a supplemental clause in case the divorce occurred. Because he had wronged me, he would forfeit all of his Miller Group shares to me without compensation. Ryan was 22 years old back then. He held my hand with loving eyes and said, "Nora, I promise I will never hurt you. This prenup will never go into effect. It's my way of demonstrating that you'll always have a way out." And me, I cried. I remember how I cried. I clung to him, refusing to allow him to sign something so unlucky, but he insisted, and he signed it himself in front of both families. Both parties even went so far as to get it notarized. After that, I threw a small tantrum, demanding that the contract be kept in a dark drawer. Our parents laughed and said, I was still such a child. Nobody ever mentioned it again. Ryan forgot I still had it. What he didn't realize was that the moment I received that agreement, I locked it in my private safe, encrypted it, and hid it away like a valuable jewel. This document was Ryan's self-dug grave, and I guarded it with great care. My lawyer returned with a thick stack of documents. I reviewed every page carefully. When I saw the latest Miller project officially transferred into Foster's hands, I couldn't help but laugh. "Yuan," I said, with a grin. "You even got this one for me." The woman beside me, my roommate Yuan, laughed too. "Even a mosquito is still meat. No way we're wasting something." Ryan spent a whole week out of town working, so he might appreciate his hard work. Yuan had been working at the Miller Group for years now. She was my inside partner, the one who helped coordinate everything. We were perfectly in sync. She was grateful for the help I gave her years ago, but to me, she was the one who saved me. If she hadn't pulled me back that night, if she hadn't brought me back to my senses, I might still be stuck in that dream, and I probably would have ended up with a cheating husband, and my entire inheritance handed to someone else. Sure, I could have been Mrs. Miller when I was young and beautiful, but once youth faded, I would have been kicked aside and turned into a joke. My whole life reduced to a cautionary tale. I reviewed the final documents and signed my name with confidence. Yuan was now an executive at the Miller Group, and had held a small percentage of shares over the past few years. She quietly acquired loose shares from various minor shareholders. Now she transferred all of them to me. That put my ownership stake above both Ryan and his father. I waited patiently for a few more days until the court verdict finally arrived. Thanks to the prenuptial agreement and the fact that Ryan was at fault, the court ruled directly in favor of divorce. The moment I received the court ruling, I called for an emergency shareholders meeting at the Miller Group. At the same time, Ryan was still standing outside my house with a bouquet in his arms, claiming he would win me back no matter what, begging for my forgiveness. Mr. Miller, his father, sat at the meeting table watching me with a look I'd never seen before. As I calmly presented everything to the board, it was like he no longer even recognized me. When he saw which of the Miller Group's projects had ended up under Foster Corp's control, along with the rest, still barely hanging on under the family name, the other shareholders exchanged loaded glances. These men didn't care about family drama. They cared about dividends. Whoever made the money, they'd stand behind them. When I finished laying everything out, I smiled and looked around the table. "So, does anyone here still object to the proposed candidate for the new chairperson of the board?" All hands raised in support except Mr. Miller's. After all, nearly every profitable Miller project was now tied to Foster. If Foster walked away, the Miller Group would collapse. It wasn't a vote, it was survival. "Nora," Mr. Miller said quietly, voice shaky like he'd aged 10 years in a day, "we're still family." "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller," I said gently, "but I finalized my divorce with Ryan this morning. We're no longer family, just business partners." That was when it finally hit him. He remembered the prenup Ryan had signed years ago. He tried to object, but Ryan did nothing wrong. The court wouldn't rule like this. I smiled and tossed a thick file across the table. If sleeping with his secretary and letting photos of them in bed end up on my phone isn't considered a fault in the marriage, then I have nothing more to say. Mr. Miller went completely silent. His hands trembled as he flipped through the documents, his face growing red with fury. He called Ryan to the company and exploded on him. The moment he arrived, Ryan had no idea what was going on until he saw the divorce judgment himself. That's when he finally broke down. "This isn't real. This cannot be how the court ruled. I was never notified. It's not real. I'm going to sue," but the judgment made it clear. Ryan had been informed about both the divorce petition and the fault-based lawsuit. His failure to respond was interpreted as consent. There were no grounds to appeal. I never saw anything. As he approached me, he muttered and stumbled. His voice is hoarse. "Nora, you didn't send me the divorce papers, did you? You are lying. You would not do this." "I sent them," I responded with a calm smile, nodding to my assistant to block his path and still smiling sweetly. I added, "I sent the documents the same night you spent with your secretary. Everything is time-stamped in the evidence. You were informed. You didn't bother to read it." Ryan's face turned white. He suddenly remembered that during the call, I had asked if he had seen the message. He said, "No. It was the secretary. She had used his phone while he was showering. She deleted the messages. That was her." Ryan collapsed onto the floor, overcome with regret and rage. Miller kicked him hard, angry and disappointed. He apologized to her. He barked, but I had no desire to watch their little guilt-ridden performance. "Mr. Miller, I told Cooley that I can't stand the sight of Ryan anymore. He should resign from his position with the company. I don't want to see him again. If he does that, I guarantee he will receive every penny of the dividends he is entitled to. But if not, I rapped my knuckles against the resignation letter on the table. My voice became cold. The Miller Group eventually disbanded, and Ryan is currently accompanying me to finalize the divorce paperwork. Ryan tried again to resist. He pleaded, but his father slapped him across the face. What else do you want? Do you want to drag this family to the ground? In the end, Mr. Miller personally dragged Ryan through the legal procedures. Ryan stood frozen in disbelief as he held the finalized divorce certificate in his hands. She was madly in love with me. She would never actually divorce me. I didn't look back. I went straight home. The court granted me full compensation soon after I won my lawsuit to reclaim the marital assets. Finally, I sat down with my parents and told them everything I had done over the years. My mother wept until her voice broke, grief and guilt spilling together. My father, a businessman his entire life, didn't waste a second. He began the formal process for me to inherit Foster Corp. From then on, my days blurred into contracts, boardrooms, and banquets, transferring shares, finalizing ownership, building alliances. Yuan, now the Miller Group's second, largest shareholder, was just as busy. We moved fast, lived faster, and thrived under the weight of power. No one called me Mrs. Miller anymore. Now, I was vice chairwoman. The foolish, lovesick girl was gone. I was no one's accessory, and I would never lose myself for anyone again. When I learned Ryan had been arrested, I had just signed a major joint venture with a state-owned enterprise. Later, I read the official statement he had discovered the truth too late. His secretary had deleted my messages, making the divorce uncontested. In a rage, he blamed her for everything, being ousted from the Miller Group, losing his marriage, and shoved her down the stairs. She died instantly. I didn't flinch. Just a sigh, a passing thought. Then my phone lit up with another promising deal, and I moved on. Some memories, Yuan reminded me, have nothing to do with us anymore. And as Ryan once told me long ago, Nora Foster was born to face the sun, the end.